What's good? What's good? Happy Thursday night. Welcome to the Cops and Convicts live stream podcast with Sean Shepard. That's who I am. We are streaming live tonight on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Subscribe, share, and hit the thumbs up and notification bells on those platforms so you can help the channel grow and know exactly what we're doing and when we're doing it. Welcome. We've had a change of plans tonight. Things went left with my guest. Maybe we'll have him back on at some point. But I wanted to talk to you all about this concept called procedural justice. It's something that all citizens should know about because it's a standard of service that members of law enforcement are supposed to provide. I believe that just about every law enforcement agency in the country shares this concept of procedural justice with their cadets. So they're taught about procedural justice. But ironically, during game changer trainings, when I ask for a member of law enforcement to define procedural justice, they can't do it. I mean, 9.5 times out of 10, they can't do it. So let's go over what procedural justice is. And let me share this with you. So there are 4 pillars of procedural justice, and this is coming from the community-oriented policing service within the U.S. Department of Justice. So check it out. Fairness in the process, transparency in actions, opportunities for voice, impartiality in decision-making. Procedural justice is based on 4 central principles: treating people with dignity and respect, giving citizens a voice during encounters, being neutral in decision-making, and conveying trustworthy motives. Research demonstrates that these principles contribute to relationships between authorities and the community in which, 1, the community has trust and confidence in the police as honest, unbiased, benevolent, and lawful. Number 2, the community feels obligated to follow the law and dictates of legal authorities. And lastly, the community feels that it shares a common sense of interest and values with the police. What's so important about procedural justice, in my opinion, was number 2. If members of the community feel like they're treated with an opportunity to voice their opinions, be heard. So if community residents feel like they have an opportunity to be heard, if they feel like they're being treated with fairness, if they feel like officers are acting with integrity, and if they feel like law enforcement agencies are moving with transparency, their theory is that residents like you and I are more likely to follow commands that are given to us by members of law enforcement. That word comply. We hear that word comply. So what they're saying is, if procedural justice is a way that members of law enforcement go about their business when they interact with members of the general public, we are more than likely to comply. I kind of agree with this. I do agree with it. So let's go over fairness. Fairness in the process. Now, my personal opinion as an adult is that fairness doesn't really exist in this world. What do I mean by that? Some people are born rich, some people are born poor, some people are born healthy, some people are born with a disease. There's nothing fair about that. Life isn't fair. So when it comes to law enforcement, fairness in the process, what does that mean? Are you being fair? Are you treating me fairly? A lot of people have an initial issue with law enforcement when it comes to, why are you pulling me over in the first place? Are you being fair in that regard? Once the interaction or the contact begins with law enforcement, I guess fairness has to do with, are you giving me a voice? Are you allowing me to express myself? Are you being transparent with me? Are you being impartial with me? Meaning, are you treating me without bias? I guess if those things are taking place, then your average citizen is going to feel like they're being treated fairly. Let's go to the next one. Opportunity for voice. Opportunity for voice. I've often shared that juvenile probationers and juveniles that have been arrested have shared that they prefer to be arrested by female officers. When I asked them why, they said that female officers give them the opportunity to speak. They hear them out as compared to male officers who tend not to. This is them saying this, not me. They're used to male officers telling them to shut the F up. Female officers listen to them, hear them out as they're getting arrested. I want to make that clear. They still got arrested. They just had an opportunity to express themselves while getting arrested with female officers. I think it's important for us as citizens to be heard while we're being detained, or if we're being arrested, or when we get pulled over. It might just be a routine traffic stop. Why is that important? Because at the end of the day, we like to feel like we're having a human interaction, that we're actually having a conversation. Now, granted, there are some instances, depending on what the nature of the stop is and what the nature of the call was, some members of law enforcement during some stops are not going to have time to hear you out. If they feel like their lives are in danger, if the call that they got causing them to detain you or pull you over is of danger to them or somebody else, you may not get an opportunity to be heard until you're in handcuffs and the officer feels like he or she has you safely secured. I'm just putting that out there. But once they do, based on what procedural justice is, that member of law enforcement is supposed to listen to you and hear what you have to say and speak your piece. We've seen a lot of videos on social media of that not happening. However, I've come into contact with many members of law enforcement that feel like that's important and that that's part of their routine when they detain us, is to hear you out. So that's the second tenet of procedural justice. Let's go to transparency. Transparency in actions. What does that mean? Well, when I think of transparency, I think of how transparent an agency is. For example, there's a critical incident, maybe an officer involved shooting. There's body worn camera footage of the incident, and we don't get to see that body cam footage for months, in some cases, years. Community residents don't feel like law enforcement is being transparent when they hold on to that footage, regardless for why they're doing it. They may have legitimate legal reasons to hang on to it. I'm just here to tell you that the community doesn't feel like law enforcement is being transparent when they do that. When it comes to individual traffic stops, my interpretation of transparency is, are you being forthright and honest with why you're pulling me over? It's that simple to me. I've had a number of instances where I've been pulled over by law enforcement. One I can think of in particular when I just started driving. My mom bought a new car. I was driving down to Trenton, New Jersey to visit my girlfriend. I'm wearing a do-rag. I have sunglasses on. Officer pulls me over. I wasn't speeding. And when he came to the window, he said to me, this car is coming up stolen. And he said that after, he gave me the standard driver's license, proof of insurance, and registration. Well, my driver's license and the registration name, the name that was on the registration was my mom's last name and my last name. So when he said that this car was coming up stolen, I didn't believe him at all. There's no way the car was coming up stolen. Why that guy pulled me over, I'll leave that for you to decide. I don't think he was pulling me over because he thought the car was stolen. But that's an example of lack of transparency. I don't think that he was being honest. Tell me exactly why you're pulling me over. And that really leads to the last tenet is impartiality in decision making. Impartiality in decision making. So that last example that I gave you, a real life example of me getting pulled over, I didn't feel like he was being impartial when he made the decision to pull me over. I feel like I was being racially profiled, and that's why he pulled me over. Nice car, black dude in a do-rag with sunglasses. What's going on here? That's how I felt. And the fact that the car was absolutely 100% not stolen and my driver's license last name matched up with the registration last name. I mean, what are we doing here? So officers are supposed to treat residents like you and I with impartiality in decision making, not just to pull us over, but are you being impartial when you ask me to step out of the car? Are you being impartial when you ask to search my car? Are you being impartial when you put me in handcuffs and put me in the back of the car to search my car? If you are being impartial, you got no problem from me. But a lot of residents don't feel like officers move with impartiality 100% of the time. Let me give you two examples that members of law enforcement have shared with me of procedural justice and not procedural justice. So a former member of law enforcement was working with LAPD at the time. And he pulls over this motorist on the freeway. And I don't recall what the nature of the stop was, but he ran this person's plates. And he was under the impression that this person was going to be dangerous to stop. So he called for backup right away, but he went up to the car and engaged in a conversation with this guy. And he kept talking and he kept talking and kept talking, never asked him to get out of the car, never said he was going to detain him because he wanted to wait until backup arrived. And once backup arrived, they asked this guy to get out of the car and he complied. And when he got out of the car, a 357 Magnum fell out of his lap and onto the floor of the car. And at that point, they were like, okay, you're under arrest, so on and so forth. And when they got the guy in the car, my friend, who was a police officer at the time, told me that the guy who they arrested said to him, he said, when you pulled me over and you came up to the window, I was going to blow your head off. And I didn't because you were cool to me. And that might sound unbelievable, but it is an extraordinary thing to have happen. It's an extraordinary thing to have someone tell you, look, I was going to blow you away. but you were cool to me. We had a nice conversation, blah, blah, blah. That's one example. Another example is a member of law enforcement who participated in a game changer training event with us in San Diego. And he shared on camera that when he was a young officer, he and several other squad cars were in pursuit of someone that was accused of shooting at a member of law enforcement. And this suspect took them on a wild goose chase. And when they finally got him, and they got him and went up to the car, they pulled him out of the car. And this officer described to me that, well, to all of us in the room, that we proceeded to tune him up. And so I kind of guessed what he meant by that, but I wanted him to say it. I said, well, what do you mean by you tuned him up? He said, I'm not proud to admit this, but we were very physical with him. Now, what do you think between those two examples of law enforcement encounters is an example of procedural justice, or procedural justice did not take place at all? I'm guessing it's not hard for you to figure out that procedural justice took place when the officer engaged in conversation and treated this suspect, a dangerous suspect, with dignity and respect, all the way up until they detained him. That was procedural justice. Police brutality is not procedural justice. So, those are two examples I wanted to share with everyone. The show must go on. We were scheduled to do an interview, but I wanted to do this procedural justice as a video that I posted, but I decided I was going to do a live stream. So let me know on these platforms how you feel about procedural justice. If you knew what it was, quick live stream on a Thursday night. I hope you all are enjoying your Thursday night. I'm going to get back to this Thursday night football game and see if the Ravens can stay hot. Thanks for tapping in. I'll get with you next time. I'm out.